Hello, my name is Nancy Kim, and I'm based here at Ewha Women's University, which you can see in the background. It's actually the largest women's university in the world. And Dr. Eunmi Kim, the president of the university, Dr. Yoorim Bang, and myself, we have recently co-authored a study on women's empowerment without power, strategic versus practical interests in the Sustainable Development Goals and voluntary national reviews.
Our study assesses global commitment to gender equality in the era of the Sustainable Development Goals, so-called SDGs. In particular, we examine countries' commitment to gender equality via the lens of practical versus strategic interest. Feminists have long distinguished between practical gender interest relating to women's equitable fulfillment of basic needs such as health, education, and living conditions, and strategic gender interests which seek to challenge unequal power relations and women's subordinate position within society. Practical gender interests are less contentious because they do not require redistribution of power or redefinition of social roles and dynamics, and are often achieved through apolitical technical provisioning approaches. Strategic interests, on the other hand, seek to transcend women's traditional roles and empower women, which requires difficult structural transformations of existing power relations. To understand the country commitment to practical and strategic dimensions to gender equality, we examine a relatively underutilized source of data, that is, the voluntary national reviews, which all United Nations member countries submit to report their progress on sustainable development goals. We believe that voluntary national reviews provide a useful self-report by each country regarding which aspects of sustainable development and which dimensions of gender equality, if any, it prioritizes.
Our analysis of the voluntary national reviews yielded two key findings. First, that countries selectively pursue gender equality, as evidenced by our finding that countries committed in their voluntary national reviews to achieving only 1/3 of the gender equality gaps which still persist in their countries. And second, we found that countries are more committed to achieving gender equality on practical dimensions such as maternal health and education than on strategic dimensions such as income, land, and political power. To the extent that countries are addressing gender equality, their efforts fall short of the transformational rights, dignity, and liberation envisioned by feminists and agreed via seminal documents such as the Beijing Platform for Action and the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. At best, countries seem to be practicing anemic forms of empowerment, and at worst, they may be further entrenching gender inequalities and dominant group interests. So in short, women and girls are increasingly making it into schoolrooms and hospitals, but they are still very much excluded from company boardrooms and halls of political power. So based on our findings, we call for a feminist revival of a more holistic and more political conception of women's empowerment and gender equality. In this era of proliferating and competing development priorities, we need to insist on the indivisibility of the hard-fought-for gender equality agenda. Without greater attention to more and more strategic dimensions of gender equality in the Sustainable Development Goals framework and voluntary national review process, women will continue to be stuck in a vicious cycle of empowerment without power. Thank you for your time, and I invite you to visit our study for further details.